Thank you very much, Dara. And thank you very much, GeoDirectory, for the invite. Sorry, let me get myself set up. I'm trying not to push too many buttons. Yes, as Dara said, I'm Cillian Lehmann. I'm the Public Lands Database Manager in the LDA. I've been there since the very, pretty much the outset. So the LDA was set up in 2018, and I was brought in a few months later. And I was basically set a task of trying to find all the public lands across the country. Where is it, what's being used for, and can any of it, or is any of it available, or can we make the most of it for housing purposes? At the time, I thought that's a grand idle challenge and all the rest of it. And now I'm, 6, 7 years in, and I'm still working on it. So I'll show you the progress we've made and the maps we've developed and the data we've used to develop this map. So that's the quick. So I'll do a quick introduction to the LDA. I'll run through the Register of Relevant Public Lands, which is the database, and then the Report on Relevant Public Lands, which Dara mentioned, was made a couple of headlines yesterday. We published our second one last week, but it went in front of the government on Tuesday. So quick introduction to the LDA. So the LDA is a commercial state-sponsored body that has been created to coordinate land within public control to provide affordable and social homes and build communities across the nation. So that's the grandiose big statement that we're supposed to be doing. We've got two sort of key functions, and it's coordinating appropriate state lands for regeneration. So again, the LDA was set up for identifying and looking at public land, opening up key sites which are not being used effectively for housing delivery. So that's look at public land. Can it be reused? Can it be rethought? Can we regenerate public land again for housing? Driving strategic land assembly, both public and private sector. So this is more of a long-term goal. A lot of public land is pepper-potted around the country. They've all got individual uses, but there's a lot of private land in between us, and can we take a broader picture for this kind of thing? On the state lands piece, so the LDA is an immediate focus of assessing and accessing and managing the state's own land to develop housing-led projects. And it's all about sustainable communities, sustainable communities, a mix of public and private sources, as I said, and a housing control-led projects. Some of the values that the LDA have that's on this slide is it's finding ways, so thinking of new approaches to data, to what's out there, but also the public land. So a lot of public lands have been used for the same purpose for hundreds of years, and let's try refocus and rethink and take a fresh look at things. But it's also got a lot of collaboration. So we want to work with all of these public bodies to say, look, this is where your uses are. This is where they've always been. Can we take a fresh look at stuff? A quick intro again to the LDA, a quick snapshot of where we're at this moment in time. I did a similar presentation with GeoDirectory a good few years ago, just not too long after I started in this job. And I think the site had, I have the notes here, there's 4,000 homes in our land capacity, and now we're up to 21,000 in a couple of years. We had 48 staff back then, we're up to 190. So we're growing massively. As I said, when I joined at the very outset, there was 3 staff ahead of me, and we're about to break 200, and we'll be looking closer to 300 by the end of this year. We have a capital capacity of over 6 billion, so we're well funded. We have a land capacity of over 21,000 homes, if we can get them through planning and get on with the construction of it. At the moment, we have over 3,500 homes under construction or just built. We have delivered 1,500 homes. Project Tussock, which I will touch on in a little bit, is where we partnership with private land developers. And again, we've got circa 8,000 homes in that pipeline. We're active. And when I say active, we're assessing or going for planning on 22 sites. And I said we have over 190 staff. So this is a company that's 6 years old. 3 of those years were during COVID. We have a huge task. Everyone knows about the housing crisis, but we are trying to hit the ground running as fast as we can. But again, this whole process is, again, I'm sure plenty in the room know that planning, developing, getting houses built is, it doesn't happen overnight. So it is a long process. Our current pipeline, again, more just bigger fingers. So the pipeline over almost 3,500 homes. And again, here's a list of some of the sites in each of these projects. Again, these are all mostly public land sites that, again, have never been looked at for housing before, and now we're trying to turn them around for housing. Almost 5,000 homes we're assessing for planning. We've over almost 6,500 in advancing through the planning system. So planning applications are made. We have planning application on over 3,500 homes. And again, 3,500 homes either constructed or in construction and will be delivered between this year and next year. So again, these are all big numbers. These are big housing numbers for any property developer in the country. We're aiming to have an annual turnover of homes of hopefully 3,000 units, which again is small fish for the housing crisis that we're in, but for a housing developer, these are pretty big numbers. And I would point out that, again, well, I'm here to talk about the public land and the data we've used to develop on public lands and to locate public lands, but we have partners with private developers. It's not all on public land, but again, it's all about getting houses built. This is the slide I was mentioning about the Project Tussig, which is our partnership with private land developers. So the LDA, if anyone was really bored and wants to read the LDA Act, it talks all about public land. And again, that's what my presentation will be about. We have a pipeline of close to 20,000 homes on public land. But as I said, the delays in getting public land built for housing, very, very little public land is sitting idle. Actually, I can tell you none of it is. So it's all being used for a source, and it's owned by some state body that is a valuable resource on their balance books. So to get them moved off and to get a new facility built and to get houses on the site and go through the whole planning process and the risk of your JRs and all the rest of it takes time. So in the meantime, we've decided to partner with private landowners, and we're getting a lot of homes built with private developers, particularly apartments, which are extremely expensive to build at the moment, and a lot of private developers are struggling to get them done. So we are partnering with private developers that have planning permission in the right location and getting homes over the line. And again, this is all cost rental, this is all affordable accommodation, which is, again, I don't need to be telling everybody in the room, vital for the country. All right, so state lands, again, that's my role in the LDA, and that's what I'm going to talk about for hopefully the next 15 odd minutes. So as I said at the very start of the LDA, I was brought in to identify all the public lands. I was told to put it onto a map, make it public, make sure everybody in the country can see what does the state actually own. So we've never, as a country, we didn't know what the state owned. We've never audited public land before, and that was my task. I came in 2019. I spent a couple of years trying to figure out how to do this. I talked to everybody I can think of to try and figure out who owns what data is out there. I met with the lads in GeoDirectory. These are people who have data on what the uses around the country are. So in 2021, we published the Land Development Agency Act, and under Section 50, we said that it was rebranded or retitled to the Register of Relevant Public Lands, and this is the requirement on the LDA to develop this map. So Section 50, a few key points from Section 50 is we have to establish a public map, so it has to be available for everybody. It's known as the Register of Relevant Public Lands, and it's showing all relevant public land and land owned by the LDA. It has to be at an appropriate scale, so everybody can examine it and all the rest of it, and it has to be on a suitable sort of base map. And then we got the PRAI, OSI, and the Valuations Office called out in our legislation to play ball with us. So they, upon request by the LDA, provide information to assist in the creation and maintenance of this register. So why are those three bodies involved and why are they important? So the PRAI are the only source in the country that can tell me who owns what, besides the landowners themselves. So there's two ways of going about this. I can go to every single landowner, every single public body that owns land, there's about 300 of them, and say, give us all your information, give us all your data, and then how do we keep that live? Or we can go to the PRAI, they're now in touch, Aaron, and say, look, give us everything that's registered to Dublin City Council or to DSB or whatever it is. And again, once we get this in the act, they play ball with us and it all works. The OSI, as I said, this map has to be on an appropriate scale on a suitable base map. The OSI map this country, they have that information, they have that data, let's use that capabilities. And then the Valuations Office is another part to play, which I'm not going to get into today. So just the definition of relevant public land is anything that's owned by a relevant public body, which are called out in our act. So it's non-commercial state agencies and government departments. The Schedule 2 bodies are the commercial public bodies. So they're the ESBs, the CIEs, the ports, that kind of stuff, or local authority. So anything that's owned by those bodies in a census town, and the census towns are anything over 10,000 in population. So again, when rounded to nearest 500. So there's 55 of them in the country, and again, I'll touch on that in a bit. So how do we do it? As I said, the PRAI, we got that in the Act, so they have to play ball with us. And we got this through the Attorney General who wrote this Act with us and the Department of Housing. So once we have access to their database and their data, we can run searches with them and build a state lands database. This is the whole country. This is everything that's, everything, not just our cities. You have to start with the large sort of base data. And this is our state lands database. As I said, we searched the PRAI for registered owners, but again, they don't have every corner of the country, every property registered. So for non-registered landowners, so nobody can really officially tell me who owns the Customs House or Dublin Castle. These were built, predate the state. I know who in the Customs House is the Department of Housing. I know the OPW managers, but who are the official title owners of that building? No one can tell me. A lot of Kildare Street, a lot of government buildings are similar to this, a lot of train stations, a lot of our barracks. These are all very, very old, historic buildings. We're very, very confident the state owned them. We don't know who. And the PRAI cannot tell us. So we have drawn them ourselves and said, look, we color code them slightly differently. We say, look, these are state assets. They're on there. They're on our maps. Because again, you can't leave the Customs House or Stephen's Green off these maps. And then we give them assumed ownership. But again, that's our information. It's our data. It's not from an official source. So we're still putting it out there, but color coding them very differently and building in all the terms and conditions around it. So don't give out to us if we get it wrong. So a lot of these public lands, so as I said, this is the whole country. This shows all of our roads, our parks, schools, hospitals, prisons, forests, bogs, ports. These are all very, very valuable state lands. And everything is thrown up here because this has to be the ground, the data set of everything. Once we had that, then we can start using the state lands database to filter down to the relevant public lands. So that's the towns over 10,000. The CSO update that every census, and they'll give us the built-up areas, which is their BUAs, that's their town boundaries for each of these areas, and we use that as a cookie cutter. So we have two maps on our website, the state lands database, the big full picture, and then the register of relevant public lands, which is what the Act says, which is just the towns, and we filter out and we omit the bogs, the forests, stuff. Like there's two different purposes for this. The state lands is the way we go about building what the Act makes us build. So once we build the state lands database, we have to enrich it. We have to get as much value out of this data as we possibly can. The information we have, what we get from the PRAI is really valuable. It tells us who owns the site and where it is. It gives us a boundary. We don't know anything else about it. We need to find out. We're looking for housing opportunities, so I need to know what it's zoned for, what the buildings on that use is the site serviced? And I don't just mean serviced by utilities. I'm talking about the schools, the hospitals, the guard stations, the post offices. A lot of this information we get, thanks very much, from GeoDirectory. The air codes, building uses, that sort of stuff is GeoDirectory, but we also team up with the Department of Housing, which we can help with zoning information. So all the local authorities give their zoning information. All the utilities, the OSI will tell us what's on the ground of that site. So is the site made up of whatever, hard surfaces, soft surfaces, forest, what kind of forest, all the rest of it. And then obviously the utility information is the site service. Again, if we're looking at two sites and one has water on it and the other one doesn't, that one's going to be easier and cheaper and more affordable for us to develop. And we're talking about affordable housing in this situation. And every little cost is added on and we need to do everything affordably. All right, a few notes on the register. So this is the first ever time this has been done. It allows for better management of the state lands. It supports transparency, optimized land usage, and assists in greater strategic planning and urban regeneration. Again, that's the big grand scheme of what the map can do. But for me, it helps me assess lands that we can now try identify for housing. some of the big figures, 175,000 plus registered folios. So that's the PREI. When I go to them, give us everything that's registered to the ESB and all the other 300 landowning bodies. That's what we get back, a folio. A folio isn't necessarily a site boundary. There could be, the Phoenix Park has is split into 4 different folios, 4 different quadrants, 4 different corners. But other sites could be a site boundary. So it's a bit messy, but again, this is big numbers. I will point out that you can only search their database by the registered owner title. That's what I'm trying to find out. I could search by folio number, but if I had the folio number, I'd know where the site is, and that's... If you can only search by the registered title, they have to have registered their asset in the correct form. So the ESB is the Electricity Supply Board. It was set up as Electricity Supply Board. It's never changed its name. I search for the Electricity Supply Board and I get thousands of entries back. If I search for the ESB, I get another couple of thousand. So they've registered their lands and their properties under different titles over the course of their duration, different staff, different whatever. At the moment, I've found about 25 different variants of the ESB, which is a real challenge. If there's a spelling mistake or someone types this E.S.B, or if they put full stops in it or not. But also, that's fine for ESB who's never changed its name. A department changes its name every 4 or 5 years, and I have to find all these as well. So this database is huge, 465,000 hectares of public land, but I don't have it all. I have no idea what the full number will be. But again, I'll show you some of the maps. Again, please go onto our website and have a look at these. There's a huge amount of data in here. So we have an awful lot of it, but not nearly enough. So that's why it's an ongoing project. Out of the 465,000, only 21,000, 22,000 almost, is relevant. So that's what's in our towns and cities. The rest are the bogs, the roads, the forests, or in their smaller towns or rural areas. As I said, there's 55 census towns, Dublin City obviously being the biggest, right down to Neenah, which is just shy of 10,000, but rounded up. So that's everything we have to look at for our report. And then I'll just, little brag, we won a National Property Award in 2025 for a few weeks ago for innovation in technology. So we use GIS systems to build these maps. It's the first time this has ever been done. It's about... I'm getting a 5-minute warning. I better stop talking about my award. This is a bit typed up. So once we have built our map, we have to write a report to government. Again, Dara mentioned this, made a couple of headlines yesterday. It only was laid in front of the Oireachtas on Tuesday. It's meant to go a couple of weeks earlier when we issued it to the department. This is where we start identifying sites. So the data is done. The data is the big map. And now we go through all of that, each of these census towns, to start picking out the sites that we think could be used for housing. We had 12 months to do the first report. That was done in 2023. And now we have to do it again every 2 years. So we have to keep looking at public lands to say, no, these are the sites that we feel. And a lot of times they're in use for another vital service. But we think that site, that use could be relocated and put housing on it. It's a better value for the state. So obviously we're not making a lot of friends with this report through the landowning bodies. But again, that's what our role is in this. And it's up to government to decide, is that the right shout or not? Yeah. So a few notes on the report on relevant public lands. The first one, as I said, was in 2023. We only had 1 year to do it, so we looked at the cities and the 5 key growth towns in the National Planning Framework, which are Sligo, Letterkenny, Dundalk, Drogheda and Athlone. We identified 83 parcels of land. As I said, these are all the important services across the country, but let's re-look at sites. Most of the local authority development plans, they see a barracks, they see a train station, they see the car parking, and it's zoned as such, and it just rolls over every year. Let's have a new look at this, and that's what we can do because we have the data, and we get to identify sites that are neighbouring. So down in Limerick, the Colbert train station is a huge big train station with lots of surface car parking in the city centre, right next door to a huge hospital that has a huge amount of ground in the back of it, right beside a load of football playing pitches. So can that area now be looked at as a single site instead of multiple owners? No one's done this in the past because each of those local owners concentrating their use and they're providing a very valuable service. But can those services be relocated or optimised? And again, we need housing built. Our new report, and it's fresh off the press. There was a few headlines about it yesterday. We've now looked at the 55 census towns, and we've upped the number to 102 sites. So some sites dropped from the first report. After consultation, after we published, they said, no, we can't move, had the conversations, or else the local authority agreed with us and are now progressing that site for housing. So we dropped them from the site. There's up to 70,000 homes that we feel can be built on public land. Now, you can kind of see on the right-hand side of the 25 report there, some of the numbers are on the least constrained. They're class 3 sites, we've called them. They're really constrained. They're going to be really tricky to develop. And it's a long-term window, long-term goal. But again, so was the Dublin Docklands. That was a very long-term project, and that's what we can identify here. Big long-term thinking and fresh thinking of public lands. And it's all to identify these strategic sites. So again, Colbert Quarter on the left-hand side is what I mentioned. Sandy Road on the right-hand side in Galway, it's a 12-minute walk from the city centre, and it's a huge big ESB depot next door to a shared Galway City and County Council depot. These are sheds 12 minutes from Air Square. Again, there's no infrastructure on this site. There's no big pylons for the ESB or anything like that. Can that be relocated slightly outside the city? And the sheds for, I have a bit of insight for the sheds on the city council stuff, because my little brother is the tourism manager for Galway City Council, and that's where he stores all his Christmas decorations. And all the Christmas lights and all the rest of it. I was going, do you need them in 12 minutes from the city centre when we can have a lot of housing? And again, there's a lot of industrial area. It's not the friendliest area, but can we build a neighbourhood here and use that industrial area as employment opportunities? You're on bus corridors, you're on your way into the Galway City Centre. It will be an epic site, and we can get 1,000 homes on it. If we can get the existing uses relocated and positioned off-site. That's my presentation in a nutshell, pretty much. So the available data that we have out there, the stuff that we have created is all available. We want the public, we want everybody to use it. Everybody should be able to audit public lands and say, what does the state own, where it is, on data.gov.ie. We've got 6 data sets in every format you can imagine. A lot of ours is GIS based, because it's spatial data. And it's all there on data.gov.ie. And again, please use it, access it, download it, build your own maps. And if we've missed anything, please tell me. And I'm getting flagged at the back that I have to finish, so just on time. So I'll, thank you very much.